Hi, good morning. Today on the 12th of August, I am still under quarantine and will continue doing the 21 chapters on the findWHERE series. Let me dive in. I am Thomas Sim, PA 2066, today 12th of August 2021. On the topic that I have gone through earlier on, we have done the introduction topic, we have done basics, we have also done the dealings and also vendor. So now we come to the topic of buyer or purchaser. For that, related to property investing and selling issues. I think this topic is interest of everyone because we are all purchaser. Before we become a vendor or investor, we become purchaser first. For the real estate market, most of the players in the market also are looking at this big segment of market who are the buyer, because the buyers and the purchasers are the driver of the whole economy. If there is no demand for housing, there is no demand for real estate, then the real estate industry would not improve, especially now with the COVID issue. Right, let me go in. So we have touched on the aspect of the basic informations, introduction, also dealings, vendor. Now we are doing a topic called buyers, and in my slide, there are 30 over slides here, so it will take a long time. So those who are interested can stay on. Those who are, of course, already learned on this subject may fast forward. Then after that, we will do the developer and the lawyer for the block, the area knowledge, body of knowledge on the shelter. After that, we will go to agents and the bankers, and subsequently, we go for all the informations, knowledge required on investing. Under investing, the block of body of knowledge involve government policy, portfolio, tenants, of course, and landlord. Lastly, of course, the most interesting and challenging part of real estate is the business aspect. How do you strategize your business in real estate using tools and internet for how to improve the platform reach, as well as what are the so-called issues, scams and issues of commission payout in the real estate industry. So let me go in. So in the most concerning part of purchaser aspect is actually the cost of acquisition. So being a purchaser of real estate, the biggest ticket of a lifetime, probably the most expensive item you would ever buy in a lifetime is actually real estate. So you can say, well, of course, I also invest in property for business, but that part, as it is an asset that you acquire for your business, is also a big item in your lifetime goal for as an entrepreneur. So cost here we will actually break down a few questions. Well, first, of course, is to be an owner, and again the ownership. So the transfer of the property, what are the costs involved? Stamp duty, of course, on transfer, and involving the issues of title or no title of a property. How much is the total likely transactional cost on stamp duty? Where are the exemptions? Who is to pay for the cost of the stamp duty? Is it half or is it in full? And other costs which are including all the legal fees and the miscellaneous disbursements. So we also talk about how to get the source of fund as per purchaser, down payment, loan to value ratio. All these are terms used by the bankers. So again, a lot of people say they rely on mortgages, savings, or gift from loved ones, EPF account, withdrawal. Are you allowed to buy second-hand house, sub-sale market using EPF or not? Is it the 90% loan from government, or is it 90% loan from private merchant bank, or is it for all the property you can get 90% loan? So these are questions that is in our mind, and for those who never really gone into real estate and never have acquired any property, these are all questions that are new to you. So we understand that EPF account 2, you can withdraw for purchasing of your house. So this means that you are buying a house for your family, and it is only given for withdrawal under the account 2 of the EPF account. Malaysian or non-Malaysian who has an EPF account in Malaysia below 55 years of age, because by 55 you can withdraw everything, so at least 500 ringgit in account 2. Of course, 500 ringgit, not much you can do buying a property, purchasing a residential home. Now, this purchasing a residential home under the EPF rules, in fact, only allow to withdraw for a developer project. So as you can read here, residential home, bungalow, terrace, MBD, apartment, condominium, studio apartment, service apartment, townhouse or hall, or a shop lot with the residential unit from a developer, right? From a developer. So you are in certain limitation, not able to use EPF account 2 to buy any other types of property like commercial property or land, or buying an industrial property, or buying a second-hand house from a sub-sale market. It's only for a developer market. Of course, the other part is that you have approved loan from the banks. Actually never met a housing withdrawal before. So of course, if you completed your first house using EPF, let's say you have completed paying off your first house, you are no more loan already, now you want to use your EPF account 2 towards the later part of your career or life, then you have paid off your first house, you want to use the account 2 to buy another house as a second house, it is usually approved by the EPF. So this part, whether you can appeal and get the money for a second hand house, then it's up to approval by the individual case. But generally, for the first house, you need to go through a developer. The reason simply because government have this policy to in a way put a background information for you, is to say that housing is supposed to be for home use. That means the family use, not for business and not for speculation, not for making money. So the government's policy stands on the principle that it is for housing purpose, having family, housing your family, not for you to make money. So the purpose of doing that is to allow people who have saved money enough into account 2 to withdraw for that purpose only. And if you look at it from the second hand house aspect, that means the second hand house as a secondary market. The idea behind the secondary market is that the person who sold the house would want to either make money out of the selling of the house or upgrading to a bigger house. In fact, it is already not the basic idea of having a roof. It's not a classical idea that a person need a shelter. So it's already exceeding that the first original idea that housing policy should foster every rakyat in Malaysia, every citizen in the country would have a roof over the head. So therefore, the government policy has a limitation in the sense not to allow account 2 to be withdrawn for other purposes like buying commercial property, making gains in businesses, having another property to speculate or make more money by selling second-hand property. So this policy, in fact, is kept as a belt, as a baseline belt, a limitation for most countries, especially in countries where people do not have a home or people do not have shelter. So the government policy is not to encourage second-hand house sales, not to encourage second-hand or secondary market, which is speculative in the interpretation of housing policy. So that I want to highlight in this chapter. So developer unit versus subsale unit is one of the topic that we need to really make a difference. That means if you buy developer unit, a lot of time there is no title because the master title is still awaiting completion of the project. So subdivision of the master title is not yet done. So the process of doing it is usually by deed of assignment where there is no title. And in the case that there is a title, because it's a completed house, a second-hand, secondary market house for many years has been completed. So this part for one important issue is that when to pay stamp duty. Because there is no title, that means there is still no transfer. So there is no memorandum of transfer because there is no title. In fact, from the master title, it needs to be completed, the whole project, over a number of years, can be 10 to 15 years even, because if the project is very big, especially strata title projects, it can have maybe in thousands of units. So construction of the block, first block and the last block can be a interval of almost 10 years. Because one block, the construction time to complete the whole delivery is about 3 years. So if you have the, let's say, 5 blocks of the buildings, then you would have probably 15 years in from the first block to the completion of the last block. If continuously 3 years is the timeline for the strata property according to Schedule H of the Housing Development Control and Licensing Act. So that means the initial part, even the first and second block has been completed, the title is not issued, and the deed of assignment is the vehicle or instrument used in the ownership transfer. So this part, the original first buyer has not yet paid the stamp duty because the title was not out. However, if the unit is sold as a sub-sale, and the sub-sale in fact completed under deed of assignment again, because there was no title, the stamp duty had to be paid on the spot of making the transfer, whereby although there is no title, the transfer needs to be paid stamp duty. This is in the reason that there can be many different transfers from the second buyer to the third buyer to the fourth buyer within the 15 years without the title, and the government wants to collect the money and ensure that this money is collected. So for those sub-sale units of condominiums where there was no title, the second buyer from the original buyer need to pay the stamp duty now, immediate of the transfer. So these are documents that is required, plus having to pay for the stamp duty on the moment of the transfer. They need to do other things like deed of novation, deed of mutual covenants. All these are actually legal terms used as a contract of saying that the ownership from the first owner is passed on to the second owner. The second owner take over all the requirement of the assigned obligations from the first owner. So the developer also need to consent and need to agree to this transfer. So that is a deed of novation, the part that the developer in the 3 parties with the developer, the owner, and new purchaser, and to sign this deed of novation. So the first owner to the subsequent purchasers can be up to a few hands. That means the unit can actually change hands to multiple owners over a period of even the 10 to 15 years. And at the end, when the last purchaser gets his title, the title will be issued because of the developer would know who is the most recent purchaser. And the most recent purchaser eventually will get the memorandum of transfer with the title to his name or to his ownership. So this process over time can actually be messy. So the legal part of it, the lawyer has to ensure that every subsequent steps will be recorded and be kept in the correct manner. Some of the lawyers then do not give back the original copy of the sales and purchase agreement to the subsequent owner, because they are worried that the subsequent owners would actually lose the original copy lah. So they usually keep it in their office for the convenience that in the future when the title is issued, they know who to look for and to complete the process. And of course, they complete the process means that if the original owner has never sold it, has never sold the property, by the time that the property is issued, the title, the original purchaser, the first purchaser who have to pay for the stamp duty on transfer according to the sales and purchase agreement price. So that is years later in that sense, keeping the files in the legal office for a number of years before the issuance of the title. So this part on the MOT, buyer stamp duty to pay, I just touched on Borang 14A, which is Memorandum of Transfer of Real Estate, and Pindah Milik Tanah, payment of the duty depending on the value of the property. So this part I want to emphasize that there are two types of value. One is the value of the sales and purchase agreement during developer sales. So this developer sales project, the sales value is actually the sales price in the sales and purchase agreement. And then the second situation is when the property is been issued occupational permit or the CCC or the OC according to different jurisdiction of the words they use. That means fit for use. That means the property is fit for human habitation. Then upon issuance of this permit, then it becomes a secondary sales or market. That means the property is now in the market as a secondary matured property. And this part, it would depends on where about this property is over the time and also the upkeep. The value would fluctuate. So the value would fluctuate over time, and the value would depend on the JPPH valuation. JPPH is a government body called the Jabatan Perkhidmatan Penilaian Harta Tanah. So this JPPH is under the Ministry of Finance in Malaysia, which determines the value of the property when they assess the property for payment of stamp duty on transfer. So let's say you have a property that you acquired from a developer first hand, which is 1 million. After number of years staying there, it becomes a secondary market property. That value of whether it is 1.1, 1.2 or 1.3 million or depreciated to 800,000, 900,000, that value when you transact in the next subsequent sales depends on the JPPH assessed value. So it may be a transacted value of 1.1 million, but then the JPPH may come out with another value which is the market valuation, which can be 1.2 million, and the assessment of that value will be used as a calculation for stamp duty on transfer. So it depends on the JPPH value, which can be higher or lower than the transacted sales value in the subsequent sales and purchase. Right, this is an example of the Borang 14A, which is a transfer document, instrument of transfer in West Malaysia. Transfer is done within about, some of the fast one will be about 3 weeks to 3 months, depending on the land office. I have done a transfer in Kuching, which is only 3 weeks with a simple, straightforward transfer without even a sales and purchase agreement. So it is not necessary every time you must have a sales and purchase agreement to transfer a property. You can transfer a property in a case where you just have to do this Borang 14A in West Malaysia, or transfer memorandum of transfer in Sarawak by just completing this form, give it to the land and survey office. Land and survey office will do the transfer. So in a scenario where transaction is between husband and wife or between family members, a lot of time there is no sales and purchase. And the issue is, of course, you go to a lawyer, and the lawyer will say, well, without a sales and purchase agreement, you cannot safeguard your interest. Of course, this is when it is arm's length transaction. But if it is not arm's length transaction, then well, it is both party agree. That's all. So in case of transfer without sales and purchase agreement, special requests for purchaser are usually cash due or increase needs of urgency, like the deceased passing on with the inheritance. So these are without the sales and purchase agreement, because it's all done through law by giving probate or distribution act to execute the transfer. Right. So table of calculation of stamp duty according to the latest is 1% for the first 100,000. After that, 101 to 500,000, 2%. Subsequently, 3%. Below 1 million, 501 to 1 million is 3%. Then after that, above 1 million is 4%. So this one, you arrive at the transfer stamp duty called the MOT. So we usually call it in the market as MOT stamp duty. And this part, there are exemptions. If you are buying as in the current state of Malaysia having this offer of HOC, then some of these HOC projects, when you buy from a developer, only developer, you cannot use this for the exemption for sub-sale market. It's only for developer market. It is exempted in full. That means in eventual time when you have the title in the future, you do not need to pay the stamp duty on. Right. We have covered the stamp duty. Now we go to the next topic called the legal fees for the sales and purchase agreement. So now you appoint your lawyer, or the developer appoint his lawyer. The legal charges, the legal fee for a professional lawyer to do the process, to handle the files, to do the process of transfer, there is a legal fee because he serves as a lawyer. Like say, let's say a teacher, teacher doing a tuition. So the tuition will be a tuition school fee, right? So this is the same scenario. The lawyer does his work, so he charges a legal fee. So who is to pay for the legal fee for the purchaser? How to calculate? Any discount or not? Share your lawyer or not? You can share out your fees or not? Or do you want to go without a lawyer or without SPA? So to all these questions, I will provide the answers in the next recording.